Welcome into War Up on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock, Jeff Upson with you here as we look back at this past weekend's wrestling action and get set for another fun weekend of wrestling. And Jeff, first and foremost, got the Christmas tree behind me. We're 1 week away from Christmas. How ready are you guys for the holidays?
I mean, as ready as we're gonna be. My son's been ready for a long time. I know your kids are probably been ready for a long time. Christmas tree went up right after Thanksgiving. Presents are wrapped. We're ready to rock. King of the Mountain this weekend. So I'm not really focused on Christmas. I'm focused on King of the Mountain, then Christmas, and then Powerade. So I mean, Christmas just kind of gets in the way of wrestling a little bit. You know, I mean, I know you're big into it. You're probably gonna be watching the Grinch every night, but it's wrestling season, man. I got rankings to do. I got stuff to do. Presents are gonna have to wait.
Well, thank God your wife's there to wrap them all for you, right?
I mean, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be able to do a lot of things.
There wouldn't
But
be Christmas in the
there
upper
wouldn't.
town.
Yeah, there actually wouldn't be Christmas. Do you get gifts for your wife? Do you actually get gifts for her? Or do you guys just not exchange gifts?
We do actually exchange gifts. Do you?
This is our first year exchanging gifts for Christmas. We want to like show our son because he's young, like, hey, this is what you do because he's just used to getting gifts. So we're trying to teach him like, hey, you're supposed to give gifts to the people you love. So this is the first year in our relationship, 10 plus years, that we are actually exchanging gifts. I just ordered hers today and it'll be here on the 24th. I'm going to wrap that thing. We're going to be good to go. Jeff's going to, I'm still going to be married after Christmas, hopefully. It's,
Nothing like waiting till the last minute. I mean, you better hope there's no shipping delays.
I had, I had rankings to do. If you just saw, we uploaded state and regional rankings today. I just am finishing up the state dual team rankings. We had a ton of action over the weekend. There's probably something wrong with my brain where it's like I have a task and I need to finish it before I move on to the next task. I'm not really good at multitasking. So like if you've called me, you know that because I don't answer my phone, I don't answer text. I just work on rankings and then I'm done and then I move on. And after regional rankings, I ordered her gift. So we're good. We're good. We're fine. No big deal.
That's right. So take note of anybody that's looking to reach out to have a conversation with Jeff.
I'm
If you
sure
don't
most
get a response, you got to try again.
a lot of people know that, man. Coaches, parents, a lot of people know that. I mean, I just again, it's a fault, and I'm well aware of that. But we're gonna move past that. I had a ton of fun this weekend. We were at the Panther Holiday Classic. We also streamed the Penstro Leasing, which for WPIAL folks, it's only Burl was there, but we had a ton of really good matchups there. Between you had Council Rock South there, you had Bishop McDevitt there. Burl was obviously in the mix there. That was the first time we got to see them. But the Panther Holiday, another really good one. We had McGuffey and Trinity. And Armstrong. Armstrong looked pretty good too. So, but we also had like 9 different dual tournaments that went on. Typically, we're at the Hampton Dog Duels, so because we weren't there, I decided to rep the shirt tonight. But yeah, we had a lot of good dual results, and it didn't really make things more clear. I think it muddied things up even more, at least in my mind, for the team race.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And let's start there with the Hampton Dog Duels because there was some notable results from it, like you had mentioned, Jeff. And obviously some teams did pretty well, but you look at some of the results. Right, round 2, Latrobe was able to beat Cannon McMillan 42-30. Then Bethel Park in round 3 beats Cannon McMillan 45-18. So Cannon McMillan certainly had a tough day because round 4 they lost to Fox Chapel as well, 30-28. So I guess kind of starting there, tough day for Cannon Mac.
I mean, they're young. They're young. They're starting at least 3 or 4 freshmen. And I'll get a closer look at them at King of the Mountain. I got to see them against Norwin. I thought they battled well. And if you look at the box scores of these, they're in these matches. So on paper, you're like, man, Kenny Mac had a pretty rough day. They were in a lot of these matches. So I'm not saying like, and we're going to talk about what they did yesterday too. So they certainly are going to be okay. Thomas Jefferson was the one that I really wanted to see. One of our favorite fans of the podcast messaged me and was like, "Hey, you're sleeping on TJ," which I probably am. But here's the thing: like, it's the recency bias. We haven't seen TJ yet. I don't know what their lineup looks like up until the dog duels, really, to see kind of where guys are. When you have three, I would say four studs, between Maddox Shaw, obviously leading that way, but Bodie Marlowe, Shepard Turk as well. You have a core of people that are that lineup is kind of built around. TJ, and I don't know if this is a lack of, maybe they didn't enter the result or maybe they just didn't wrestle, but Cannon Mack was supposed to wrestle TJ. We did not see that, or at least I didn't have the results for that on there. Because right now all I'm showing is Bethel Park went 5-0 and TJ went 4-0. So I would have loved to see TJ versus Bethel, to be honest with you. Whatever, for whatever reason that didn't happen, but that would have at least kind of shored up some things on my end with rankings. But there was, it's a mess. I'll just put it to you this way. The WPIAL is a mess when it comes to the AAA team standings and who's where. It's really hard to gauge.
You're right in the sense too. TJ has the studs. It's a matter of everything else. I mean, you can have those studs to get you. You're going to be in every single match because you're getting likely to get bonus from all those guys. But it's a matter of, can you fill every weight class? Are you going to be competitive in most of those weight classes? You see the scores. They completely dominated. They beat Mount Pleasant 72-6, Central Catholic 72-6, Hampton 64-12, Plum 57-18. But other than maybe Plum, none of those schools, on the AAA side are going to scare you. So you'd want to see them wrestle, like you said, at the Bethel Park, where Bethel Park had a great weekend of wrestling. They beat Altoona, who ended up beating Fox Chapel. They beat
Yep.
Canamac, so they beat Altoona 38-27. They beat Plum 57-9. So again, kind of looking at that high score for TJ as well. But then you mentioned Canamac 45-18. Then they ended up beating Latrobe 32-29, and then beat Fox Chapel in a very tight one, 28-27. So great weekend for Bethel Park. Fox Chapel battled Bethel Park tough. They beat Latrobe 36-32. So Fox Chapel, also had a very good weekend because they beat both Latrobe and Canamac.
Well, and it's kind of interesting because you look at like a team like Fox Chapel. Fox Chapel, I'm pretty sure, has 300 kids on their roster. I mean, if they have, I'm serious. You look on Track Wrestling, like they have so many kids. They don't have anybody that's like, they don't have a Maddox Shaw or Bodie Marlowe, right? They have some really just solid guys all throughout. Their lineup from top to bottom is pretty good, but no one spectacular, and that shows, right? That shows because they're able to be in these matches, and they wrestled Bethel Park really, really well. They had Canamac 30-28. They beat them. So, Fox Chapel, and we said the same thing last year. They're just a really solid team, top to bottom. And I would agree with you with TJ. It's like they did wrestle well, but we didn't get to see them against some of the bigger guns, right? We got to see them against Plum, who's, Plum has some quality guys, but they're not the Plum of last year. Interestingly enough, when I was up at the Panther Holiday, because people always like to complain to me, someone said, hey, you're sleeping on Altoona. Altoona's, you should have Altoona ranked. And to be fair, the preseason team rankings that we do, they're a crapshoot because you really don't know where guys are going to be. You don't know how guys fit into the lineup, descent plan, et cetera, or injuries for that matter. State College was way too high. But when you look at Altoona, I said, well, they're going to the Hampton Dog Duels as they do every year. That's going to be a good gauge to see where they're at. And I agree. I think Altoona's in the conversation. They should be in the top 25 when we update our rankings. So, yeah, it's early. There's people that are still out of the lineup. Um, every team has some injuries already. Maybe some guys haven't even started yet. So football season, I mean, you have to remember a lot of these teams played football late into the season. So it's just a matter of, hey, when the chips fall and we get the 2 pounds and now the lineups start to shift, where are these teams going to be? Because it's going to look drastically different, in my opinion. I think the winner was Bethel Park in the sense that Bethel survived a gauntlet, if you will, of some really good teams that are just solid, right? They're good dual meet teams. And they're still without one of their starters, too. So I think this is going to be I think this is a good kind of jump into the dual meet season before the 2 pound allowance comes in.
Another duel that happened, you mentioned Kiski area had their duels as well. North Allegheny was yeah, probably the cream of the crop here in regards to performance and taking home a quote unquote title, so to speak, as they were able to go undefeated, going 5-0 at Kiski, including a big win over Kiski area, 37-29.
I think, I mean, Kiski has and I know Coach Heater's gonna love this, but I mean, I probably overlooked Kiski a little bit too, because you just, again, you really, it's hard to, they have one guy who's not in the lineup that is going to make an impact on any other team. He's just in a logjam. We have Mark Gray, who is a state medalist. You have Mario Hutcherson, who's one of the best freshmen in the nation, right? You have Cooper Roskowski, a state medalist who's ranked as high as number 2, right? So you have Abraham Taylor, who's trying to, they can't really flex him around. They can't really move. You can't really bump anybody down to get him in. So they're having to do some shuffling to kind of give guys rest. Mark Gray's had some injuries over his career. So Kiski, I thought, probably, despite the fact that they lost to North Allegheny, I think impressed me the most. North Allegheny I was already high on. Kiski just kind of proved that they belong in that conversation. Because if you remember last week, I mentioned about Penn Trafford, and I said, man, Penn Trafford looked pretty good at the Hickory tournament. They ended up going 3-2, right? So they lost to Peters Township, who Peters Township I thought had a good tournament as well. But overall, yeah, Kiski impressed me because we expected North Allegheny to do what they did.
I want to jump ahead a little bit, Jeff, as far as like the results, because we're talking about both of these teams. But we talked about a tough weekend, right, for Cannon McMillan, and we talked about a good weekend for North Allegheny. So you got to be thinking North Allegheny's riding high, Cannon McMillan trying to figure out what's going on, and then they wrestle Tuesday, and Cannon McMillan beats North Allegheny 33-30.
Yeah. Again, remember what I said about a mess? It's clear as mud. That threw a wrench into a lot of things. I was like, okay, this is, if that match didn't happen, if that dual meet didn't happen, things are a lot more clear for me. And I think there was some aggravating factors there. Kellen Buggy was not in the lineup for North Allegheny. I think that changes things. And again, I think Cannon Mac, they're getting better. I think Cannon Mac's going to continue to get better as the year goes on because they're very young. They have a kid from California, Aiden Solomon, who his sister is a Fargo national runner-up. He's not too bad himself. He's at 172. I think he's going to start getting better. The Collins, Bryce and Braden Collins at 189, 215 are continuing to get better. Owen Rush is getting better. Those are everyone I just named is a sophomore or younger, right? So they just don't have anyone down low. They have no one at 7, 14, or 21. But through the middle, again, 3 freshmen are starting for them. That's, if those guys can get wins, they're probably going to do well, right? But the problem is the inconsistency there. So North Allegheny, yes, they lost. They didn't have one of their studs in Kellen Buggy, and I think it could be different next time around. But again, it just adds more confusion to the, I know the WPIAL steering committee, when they're looking at the seeds and trying to go through at the at-large selections, they're going to be looking at all this stuff and say, what the hell's going on here? Team A is beating Team C, then Team B beats Team C, and it's very confusing. So I think you have to take it all in strides and kind of see make sense of it all.
Yeah, we do know they look at these early season matchups. Even though they're
Yeah.
December, even though teams may not have all their guys because of football, they're still looking at them and they're still going to seed accordingly. And yeah, if this match doesn't happen yesterday, then it's pretty clear as far as how they should probably be seated. NA's, up towards the top. Canamac's going to be in that, 9-10 mix. But now it's like, okay, how do you go about this? Thankfully, there's still a good, month and a half of wrestling team-wise to go to maybe help determine that. But we'll see. It's going to
And
be interesting the next month or so.
we didn't even really talk about Collinsville, because Collinsville, they were away. They wrestled St. Ed's. So you're talking about one of the best programs in the nation, and that's who they were wrestling. People, I guess because Collinsville wasn't in any of these duels, you're thinking, well, what's Collinsville up to? They had been up at the Panther Holiday previously, but I don't know. I forget if it was last year or the year before that they were there. But they decided to go to Ohio, where Collinsville, I mean, again, you're towing the line with some of the best in the nation. St. Ed's is a program that is always historically ranked very high. And Collinsville went 2-1 there. So they lost to St. Ed's 43-20. So you're talking about one of the best teams in the nation. There's a reason why Collinsville is regarded as high as they are. And they're missing some guys. Coach Swink was kind enough to let me know that their heavyweight's going to be coming back soon. So that's going to help them out tremendously. And they have some young freshmen as well that are trying to get their bearings. And Franklin Regional, they won the Trinity Duels. So I think Collinsville and Franklin Regional are kind of in the pecking, the 1-2.
Yeah.
And then Bethel Park, after winning what Bethel Park did, I think Bethel Park probably is 3, Norwin 4-ish. And then I think it's a crapshoot. TJ, North Allegheny, Kiski, Canamac, all those teams, I think they can all win. Fox Chapel, I don't want to forget Fox Chapel. Coach Frank would be pretty upset with me. But I think they're all kind of in that mix, that tier of like, on any given day, these guys could win.
Looking at some other duels as well, Jeff, you look at the Moon duels from this past weekend, and Derry's looking strong. We talked a little bit about them last week as potentially a team that could at least battle with Burrell and be that number 2, number 3 team in AA, and they look strong.
I mean, you're gonna love this, Greg. You were right. I was wrong. Derry is the real deal. Derry is really good. And I think again it goes back to seeing who's in their lineup, right? Rocco DiCario at 107 is wrestling really, really well. They have they have a log jam. I'm curious to see what they do in the middleweights, because they have 3 guys that are kind of all in the same weight range, or like 27, 33. So depending on how they end up, I don't know who's certified where, but between those guys, it's going to be interesting to see how they end up. And let's not forget they got Ewan Olson. So we talked about Dayton Pitzer being ineligible, which imagine if they had had him in the lineup, right? I think we're talking about Derry being a potential to win a WPIAL title, right? But they also have Ewan Olson from West Mifflin, who was a regional 7th place finisher last year, who's now at Derry. He's going to add a huge spark to their lineup as well. So in addition to the young guys that they have, Mason Horwath and Brady Brown as well. So Derry is for real, and that's going to be reflected in this week's rankings and the team rankings and the state rankings, because they ended up going 4-1, or excuse me, 5-1. Their only loss was to Parkersburg. Parkersburg's traditionally one of the best teams in West Virginia, so not too shabby for them.
Other duels that took place, not really much noteworthy, but just did want to mention. Obviously, Ringgold had a duel tournament. North Hills had one as well, and Upper St. Clair did too. But again, nothing as I would say noteworthy as far as getting in that team race conversation. But obviously, a lot of good dual meet wrestling action. The one individual tournament that had probably the most WPIAL kids, Jeff, and obviously we talked a little bit about it already, the Panther Holiday Classic. And when you look at the weight classes and how those folks within the WPIAL did, you look at 107 pounds. Jackson Hoy of Trinity, a very good tournament, finishing in third, and Riley Smith of Seneca Valley finished in sixth place.
Yeah, and Riley is finally not like 88 pounds. He's a little bit bigger now. He's not a full size 107, and I know Jackson Hoy was a little bit lighter as well. But 107 was kind of a crazy bracket because you had a lot of young guys, freshmen that are trying to kind of stake their claim, if you will. And I thought Jackson Hoy finishing third here was very impressive. I love the Panther Holiday because it's a good mix of Double A and Triple A, and all the Western type schools with a mix of some teams from up north and out east. So it's a good barometer, if you will, between schools that you're not really going to see maybe ever, right? Whether that's in the state tournament or state dual tournament. So yeah, Jackson Hoy, I thought he wrestled well, and Riley Smith able to get on the podium.
114 pounds, Bruce Anderchak of Quaker Valley. He got into third place. Parker Jennings of Trinity finished in seventh. He beats Clayton Ely of McGuffey 8-6. Ely finishing in eighth place.
Parker Jennings battled David Heiser pretty tough. And David Heiser, of course, was at Faith Christian. Now he's at the Hill School. He had to default out. But, Anderchak, this was, you had Max Dingus, who's one of the best freshmen in the state, and Dakota Santa Maria, who was a returning state medalist. And Bruce Anderchak was, he battled. Again, finishing third in a pretty deep weight class there. So I was excited to see him. And actually, there was a couple Quaker Valley guys that we're going to talk about that I was excited to see kind of where they stood.
121, the WPIAL had Tucker Main of McGuffey finishing in sixth place. 127 in the WPIAL, Dom Canale of Trinity finished in fourth place. And at 133, it was an all WPIAL final. Drake McClure of Bentworth over Emmett Wolf of McGuffey, 4-0 in the finals.
Yeah, and I'll go back to 127 real quick. 127 was absolutely stacked. Eric Carlisle, who won it, was a state qualifier last year. He beat two returning state medalists to get the title, beat Brady Slicker in the finals in overtime, and then beat Brad Wagner in semifinals before that. Dom Canale took fourth there. Now, if you remember, Dom Canale won this tournament, so that just shows you how deep 127 was for the tournament. And 133 in an all WPIAL finals, Drake McClure looked solid throughout the weekend. I mean, he's just I just think he's getting better and better. Obviously had a really good year last year, but he had some, I wouldn't say inconsistency, but last year he would beat somebody and then lose to him, beat somebody and lose to him. So with him, I thought he looked really good. And I thought Emmett Wolf has looked really good, considering how he was wrestling last year towards the end to now. This was another deep weight class as well.
139, Lucas Barr of McGuffey wins the title. Also in the WPIAL, Alec Formani of Armstrong finished in sixth place. 145, Matt Dana of Quaker Valley. He finished in third, defeating Zach Hill of Seneca Valley 10-1. Hill finishing in fourth place. Armstrong's Max Formani finished in sixth place in that weight.
If you should go back, you should go back and watch the finals at 139 because Lucas Barr is, I don't know, he's like 5'3". I mean, he's short and stocky. Dawson Schaefer's a freshman who's like 5'11". He's tall and skinny, and like when they were standing next to each other, I mean, it was a foot difference. And Lucas Barr, it was a fun match. It was an 11-4 match, but Lucas Barr, I mean, of course, you have this guy who's like, you're up to his hip, right? And he was able to hit a blast double. and it was just like his legs were just hanging out right in front of him, and he just took him right down. Dawson Schaefer, he's not a WPIAL guy, but I thought he wrestled really well. Lucas Barr, I think, I don't know what McGuffey's certification looks like, but he looks like he could potentially get down. Again, the 2 pounds are coming in a week, so it's going to be there's going to be a lot of shifting. But Lucas Barr, I thought, wrestled really well. Maybe not the deepest weight class at 139, but he certainly looked good. And Matt Dana, look who he beat in that third and fourth place match. He beat Zach Hill from Seneca Valley, and he beat him 10-1. So two guys who are pretty. They have a lot of similar opponents, and Matt Dana was able to come away with a victory. I thought that was an impressive win for him to take third.
152 pounds. The only WPIAL place winner was Sam Jacobs of Armstrong, finishing in 8th. 160, Owen Isick of Bentworth. He finished in 3rd place in that weight. And then jumping to 172, Caleb Kinsey of Armstrong. He was a champion at 172 pounds. And also Reed Teagarden of McGuffey finished in 8th place, and Marcus Ritchie of Quaker Valley finished in 6th.
So I'll go back to 160 real quick. That was an absolutely loaded weight class because you had Armett Walton Ball and Cross Cassidy. Walton Ball is a guy who last year was at Faith Christian. 2 years ago as a freshman, he was a state medalist. Goes to the Hill School. He and David Heiser leave Faith to go to the Hill School. At our event, True Power, he beat Lonzy Vielma and majored him, I believe. He majored Cross Cassidy, who was ranked in the nation. He might be, I don't know, but he was ranked in the nation. And then you have Owen Ipchick from Bentworth, who basically outside of those two, he dominated the rest of the field, right? So a really good tournament for him. But the biggest, I wouldn't say surprise, but the most impressive performance from the WPIAL was, for me, Caleb Kinsey from Armstrong. This was a really good weight class. And Kinsey came out and beat a very tough Mason Savitz from Corey 7-2, controlled the match. It seemed like anytime an Armstrong wrestler was up, you like a ranked opponent or a seeded opponent was going to lose, because Armstrong, I don't know what it is, but they were out on a mission. And I think they're well prepared, right? Because they came out and there was, every time Paul Myers and I were looking at the brackets to see how the seeds held up and et cetera. We're like, man, an Armstrong guy knocked off this guy, an Armstrong guy knocked off this one. So it was just kind of rapid fire. And Kinsey just was the cherry on top, I think, for them to win it at 172. That's a very good win for him. And Teagarden, again, he is such a critical part to that McGuffey lineup, right? If you can get him, Garrett Newman, them to kind of wrestle up a level, I think it's going to be a really good performance by McGuffey.
Looking at the upper weights, the WPIAL had one placer in 189. That was Ty Bradshaw of Armstrong, finishing in 8th place. No WPIAL guys at 215 and a 285. Armstrong also gets on the award stand with Philip Rierick finishing in 7th place. But overall, a very good tournament and a good barometer for a lot of these guys. We also had mentioned, Jeff, the Penstro Leasing Kickoff Classic, where Burrell finished in 3rd place. Bishop McDevitt was the team champion, Nazareth second. So Burrell still beating teams like Council Rock South, Cumberland Valley, Boiling Springs, just to name a few. But as far as medalists for Burrell, the only one that got to the finals was Cam Baker, and he finished in 2nd place at 127.
Yeah, and if you listen to you were calling it the Penstro Leasing, if you listen to the finals broadcast, PA Power Zone, TC Warner, he was like, yeah, we're here at the Pennzoil something or whatever. So I'm at the Panther Holiday. I'm monitoring streams for 9 mats at Panther Holiday. I'm also monitoring 7 mats at the Penstro Leasing, which for the last 10 years it was the CV Kickoff Classic, but last year Penstro, they're the naming sponsor, so it's the Penstro Leasing Kickoff Classic, and I'm listening to the broadcast, and I hear TC say, yeah, it's a Pennzoil, and I'm like, oh gosh, it's not, it's a Pennzoil, and then he said something like, Yeah, like he was pulling down his singlet, the legs of his singlet. He was like, yeah, he's trying to tuck those into his socks. I was like, I'm dying. I'm like spitting up my drink, like listening to this. I'm like, I hope other people are enjoying it as much as I am. But um, from a Burl standpoint, again, so this was kind of weird because they only placed top six, even though there's not as many teams there as some of your other bigger tournaments. But the depth there, they certainly could place the top eight with, there was a lot of really good guys who ended up not placing. Carter Thomas took third at 121. Again, not maybe the deepest weight class, but I think it's a good gauge to see where some of them are at. Cam Baker was in a really loaded weight class. Connor Killian ends up winning it, and he beat Cam Baker 12-5 in the finals. But Colby Martinelli from Penridge, who which was as high as third in the state in Hershey a couple years ago, he was third. So a really deep weight class there. And Cam Baker, I mean, I think he just ran into a hot hand with Connor Killian. Connor Killian had won the Kickoff Classic 3 years ago as a freshman at 106. He got hot at the right time, and he was able to beat a bunch of really good guys.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Thomas in third place, Calio Zanella finished in fourth place at 152, Isaac Lasinski third at 172, Aiden Kuhn at 285 finished in fourth place, Julian Bertucci finished in sixth at 145, and Luke Boylan at 215 also finishing in sixth. So deep tournament, but as far as Burl goes, still getting half their guys, 7 wrestlers on the awards stand.
Yeah, and that's really what we're looking for, is for the, we know who Burl's big guns are, so to speak. And again, they're just solid throughout, but they have some holes, right? And that's nothing new to them. They've had holes in the past. They've placed at the state tournament with holes. But I think, I think they had a good tournament. And again, it was the first tournament of the year for them. Calio Zanella was the one I was kind of most excited to see how he would do, because he's one of the guys who you're like, okay, if he's wrestling well, I think the team's going to wrestle well. Luke Boylan, same way. Luke Boylan last year took some losses that I was like, probably shouldn't have lost to that guy. And, so far, I think, he placed in a pretty deep 215 bracket where all those guys are ranked in the state. So, I think it was a good performance by Burl.
Well, we got another exciting weekend of wrestling action coming up here, Jeff. King of the Mountain tournament coming up. PA Power will be there live streaming it. You look at some of the weights and some guys, and we'll see where they are. But when you look at the weight classes, is there any couple weight classes in particular you have circled as, okay, here's one that's really going to jump out and be a great bracket to follow?
Yeah, I mean, right out of the gate, 127, man. 127 is loaded. If you look at how many guys are state medalists, you have Dom Deputy, you have Dalton Wenner, state medalist, you have Aiden Coons, who had just beat Tanner Gano, Braden Weaver from Altoona. As I mentioned, Tanner Gano. It's absolutely. Oh, then Connor Killian, who we said just beat Cam Baker, he's in there as well. 27 is a pretty stacked bracket. And that's one I'm definitely looking forward to. So in terms of the WPIAL, Shaler's there. I'm excited to see Anthony Jones from Shaler, to see how he does, because he wasn't really tested at the Char Houston tournament. So he's going to get a chance to wrestle some pretty tough guys here. I'm also excited to see Michael Johnson from West Allegheny. I've been hearing a lot about him. The West Allegheny program is always just churning out studs. But Michael Johnson is one that I've heard a lot, and I'm excited to see how he does there at 107. I could see him potentially, upsetting some of the guys that are ahead of him. But if you look at throughout all of them, 33 is another good weight class as well. Of course, Luke Willishell is the top seed there, but you have Caden Judice from Baltimore area. You have Collier Hartman from Cannon Mac, who's obviously a state qualifier from last year and pretty tough. David Kennedy from Montoursville, so it's a pretty good weight class there. But yeah, I mean, it's a deep tournament, and it's interesting because I haven't been to the King of the Mountain in a couple years, because it was always on the same weekend as Panther Holiday, so I was always at the Panther Holiday Tournament. Um, and I feel like the last time I was at the King of the Mountain, there was a lot different teams there. But looking at what they have right now, it's a really good field. And of course, from the WPIAL standpoint, I think Latrobe is going to have a good tournament. Um, Curious to see how some of our other programs do, because it's a good mix of AA, AAA, East, West.
Yeah, you have Latrobe, you have Canamac, Bethel Park, Shaler, West Allegheny, just to name a few right off the top, and should be interesting to see how they all kind of fare with some of these matchups. And obviously, you're going to have some guys who are not only just the best in the state, but some that are some of the best in the nation
Yeah,
going at it. So
You got Dalton
uh,
Perry. You got Dalton Perry, Asher Cunningham. You've got, I mean, 72 is stacked. You got state champions. I forget how many state champions there are here, but there's a lot. Luke Sipes. If you look at 160, Reagan Milheim from Warrior Run, who's a state champion, is there. It's yeah, it's very loaded. It's top heavy, right? So I think that's where like the Bethel Park guys. I think this is going to be a good gauge for them individually, not as a team, but individually to see how they do. The Pierce Reinhardts, the Seth Millers, to see kind of where they're at, because Ethan Higgins, for example, is the top seed at 152. Expect him to have a good tournament, but that's another deep weight class. You have a number of state qualifiers in that. So from an individual standpoint, this is going to be a good test for those Canamac freshmen as well. When we were going through the seeds last night, I was like, oh, well, watch out, because this Canamac freshman is pretty tough, right? You don't want him going against the third seed right out of the gate, because that could cause some issues. So, this is a good tournament for these types of teams like the Canamacs and Bethel Parks and Latrobes, where it's going to be, from an individual standpoint, this is going to really tell you where you're at.
and a good test for Powerade coming up, and then jumping in the second half of the season. So should be a lot of fun this weekend here at King of the Mountain. And make sure you stick with PA Power Wrestling, right, to make sure you're streaming if you're not there.
Yeah, we'll be streaming Friday and Saturday, all rounds, all mats. There'll be eight mats on Friday and 4 on Saturday. So it's if you've ever been to Mill Hall, there's a chance for snow basically every day. So just, you never know what you're going to get. And, but yeah, we'll be there. I'll be leaving tomorrow to go set up and get everything hammered away. So, excited to be on the road once again.
Oh, should be a lot of fun. And then obviously next week, we'll make sure we get you a show. Obviously before Powerade, make sure you're set up. We'll discuss King of the Mountain and talk about the results and any other duels that stick out from this past week. Obviously, a lot of matches going on or have happened right tonight, Jeff, that we'll make sure we cover as well. But get you set for an ultimate preview of the Powerade tournament coming up here next weekend. Hard to believe, we're already quickly to that point.
It is hard to believe, Greg. It's hard to believe that we're at Powerade, like we're already talking about Powerade, because literally it's a week away, right? And the 2 pound allowance is a week away. I'm sure a lot of our wrestling folks are pretty excited about that. It's going to be fun. Beast of the East is also happening this weekend. That's a Saturday-Sunday tournament. Norwind and TJ are there. So obviously they have some bigger guns that are looking to do well. Other than that though, there's not a ton going on. There's some duels. But then we're right into Powerade, right? We'll probably have to do a show Thursday, right? The day after Christmas. Because I'm sure you'll be watching A Christmas Story on repeat all day on Wednesday.
I think we talked about this last year, Jeff. I'm not a huge fan.
I know we did. We ranked our top Christmas movies last year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget what yours was. I think we
rather
both
watch
agreed
Home
on.
Alone repeat.
We both agreed on Elf, right? We both agreed that
We
Elf
did,
was a must watch.
Elf, I think Elf, Home Alone, and Home Alone 2 are like ones that I just have to watch at least 3 or 4 times.
And I think if I remember correctly, now remember I have a pretty good memory when it comes to the stupid stuff like wrestling results and things you say a year ago. Did you say Bad Santa?
No, I
I
did
think you
not.
know. I
So
think you did. I think you're lying to me. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to the tape. I'm pretty sure you said Bad Santa.
you can, because I definitely did not.
No.
That's one I do not watch every year. To be honest with you, I don't know if I've actually, maybe once I've seen it.
All right.
Yeah, it's not one of the top five for
It's
me.
not. It's not in the
So
Warnocks. Not in the. It's not in the mix. Okay.
so yeah, sorry, buddy. You have to. I guess that memory that
Hey,
I'm always
listen. It's
giving you so
fading,
much
man.
kudos.
With
Like,
my
hey,
great.
how did you remember that 5-4 score from 18 years ago? But
Well, my dad's the same way though. My dad can remember a score from 1970, but um, he forgets what he had for breakfast sometimes. I'm the same way. We're when we started this show, when you and I started, well, when we started doing the show, what, almost 15 years ago? I mean, it was almost 15 years ago. All right, we were young kids, and now we're not young. We have our own kids. Our hair is getting a little gray. So we're gonna forget some things. Isn't it hard to believe
yeah,
we've been doing this show for almost 15 years.
you know what? The parenthood has definitely killed my memory quite a bit. That's for sure. It's like I got to
Remember
remember all
driving
the
to
other
the
things, right?
MSA studios,
Yep, yep,
doing the show live in studio there. Yeah,
yep.
it's crazy. Fun
Now we
times,
get to do
man.
it here in our basements.
Hey, you got a Christmas tree, man. That's all that matter. All I have is some cool backdrop. You got the Christmas tree ready to rock and roll.
That's
Well,
right.
man, I'm excited. So yeah, King of the Mountain this weekend. We'll be there and ready to rock and roll.
And happy holidays to everyone who's been
Yep.
following us, listening, watching in. We'll be excited to kind of break down things for you after the Christmas holiday, and look forward to should be a fun holiday weekend of wrestling action, and getting into the second. I guess you could say second half of the year. We're really just kind of getting into the meat of the schedule as far as the team portion, and getting ready for the second half of the year.
Yeah, but before you know it, we will be talking about team races. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I know we say that every year, but like, after the new year, like, we're gonna be start saying playoffs. Like, we're gonna start talking about that. Which
Yep.
I'm told there's close to a decision. If not, a decision has already been made on where state dual tournament's gonna be located. So stand by on that. I'm not gonna say anything else, but we're close.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to that and much more. But again, happy holidays to all of you who have been following us. And thank you for watching us and listening in here today. For Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. This has been War Up on